Filipina tennis star Alex Eala is expected to compete first in the Strasbourg Open. The 20-year-old Filipina tennis sensation enters the tournament fresh off an impressive round of 32 finish at the Italian Open, where she pushed
this Australian Open in a way that I haven't really seen any player do before. Certainly not someone as new on the scene, so making their turn.
Something is happening in Strasbourg right now, and if you're not paying attention, you are going to miss one of the most compelling stories in women's tennis this year. A 20-year-old from the Philippines just walked into one of Europe's most respected clay court tournaments, and the entire city felt it. Not because of a press release, not because of some marketing campaign, but because when Alex shows up somewhere, the world simply takes notice. That's not hype. That's just the reality of who she is and what she represents at this point in her career. We're going to break all of it down today, from what this tournament means for her development to what's waiting for her in Paris just 7 days after this event wraps up. So stay with me, because this story has layers, and every single one of them is worth your time. Let's start with the man who runs this tournament, because understanding Denis Naegelen tells you a lot about why this welcome has been so significant. Denis isn't some corporate suit who stumbled into tennis administration. This is a former professional player from the Alsace region of France, a man who grew up around clay courts, who understands the sport from the inside out, and who has spent the better part of his life protecting and growing the Strasbourg Open. Back in 2009, this tournament was in serious trouble. There were real conversations about moving it out of Strasbourg entirely. Denis stepped in through his company, fought for it, kept it in France, kept it in the city, and slowly transformed it into a WTA 500 event, one of the most prestigious stops on the women's circuit in the weeks leading up to Roland Garros. For over 15 years, he has watched the best players in the world walk through those gates. Champions, legends, future Hall of Famers. He has seen the full spectrum of what elite tennis looks like. So when a man with that kind of experience and that kind of history starts talking about the energy that Alex brings to his tournament, you listen. Because he is not easily impressed. He has seen too much to be easily impressed. And yet here he is, genuinely buzzing about a 20-year-old from Manila who has never even won a WTA 500 title yet. That tells you everything. The courts at the foot of the European Parliament have hosted some incredible moments over the years, but Naegelen himself has said the atmosphere surrounding this tournament right now feels different, feels bigger, feels like something he hasn't quite experienced before at this level. And the reason is simple. It's Alex. It's the movement that follows her everywhere she goes. Now let's talk about that movement, because this is where the story gets genuinely fascinating. Alex doesn't just have fans. She has an army. The Filipino sports community is one of the most passionate, most devoted, most emotionally connected fan bases on the entire planet, and they follow her with an intensity that most athletes at her level simply don't experience. We're talking about people who set alarms for 3 in the morning just to watch her play. People who flood comment sections, fill trending pages, and turn every single match into a national conversation back home. When Alex steps onto a court, it doesn't matter what tournament it is, it doesn't matter what round it is, it doesn't matter if it's a first-round match on a Tuesday afternoon in a city most people have never thought about. An entire nation of over 110 million people holds its breath together. That is not something you can manufacture. That is not something a marketing team creates. That is real, organic, deeply felt human connection between an athlete and the people who see themselves in her. And what that means for a tournament like the Strasbourg Open is something Denis Naegelen probably couldn't have predicted when he first saw her name in the draw. People who had never heard of this tournament before this week are now searching for it online, streaming it, following it, caring about it. The social media numbers are doing things they've never done for a WTA 500 event in Strasbourg. That's the Alex effect, and it is as real as anything in tennis right now. But here's what I want you to understand about Alex, because the story isn't just about a popular athlete with a devoted following. The story is about a genuinely elite tennis player who is growing in real time, right in front of our eyes, and doing it on one of the most demanding surfaces in the sport. Clay is different. Anyone who has played it knows it's different. The ball bounces higher, the points last longer, the margins are tighter, and the physical demands are just brutal in a way that hard courts and grass simply are not. Alex grew up training at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, which means she has been around clay her entire development. But training on clay and competing at the top level of professional tennis on clay are two entirely different conversations, and Alex has been honest about that. This clay season has been a real education. She made stops in Linz, Stuttgart, and Madrid, each tournament adding something to her game, each match teaching her something about the surface, about her own game, about what it actually takes to survive and advance in this environment. Then came Rome, the Italian Open. And that's where something shifted. She reached the third round at a major clay event for the first time in her professional career, beating genuine world-class opponents along the way before running into Elena Rybakina, the world number 2, in a match that even in defeat said so much about where Alex is right now. She didn't look out of place. She didn't look like someone who had been gifted a run through a weak section of the draw. She looked like a player who belongs at that level, who can compete at that level, and who is only going to get more dangerous as she accumulates more experience on this surface. And she's talked about it with real clarity. She knows her relationship with clay is still developing. She knows this is her first season where she's really committed to these high-level clay events in a serious way. And she carries that awareness not as a limitation but as fuel. There's something genuinely compelling about watching an athlete who knows exactly where they are in their journey and is completely at peace with the process while simultaneously pushing as hard as they can. That's who Alex is right now. That's the mindset she's carrying into Strasbourg. Now let's talk about the draw, because this is not a soft field she's walking into. Madison Keys, Leylah Fernandez, Emma Raducanu, Maria Sakkari, Emma Navarro, Ekaterina Alexandrova. This is a lineup that would look right at home at a Grand Slam. These are players who have been around clay for years, players who know exactly how to navigate a French spring week, players who are all chasing their own Roland Garros preparation with real urgency. Every match in Strasbourg this week is going to be a war. There are no easy points, no soft serves, no opponents who are going to hand her anything. And that is exactly what Alex needs. That is exactly why being in this draw matters so much right now. She doesn't need comfortable. She needs competition. She needs the kind of high-pressure, high-stakes point-by-point grind that only a field like this can provide. Every forehand she has to dig out under pressure, every slice backhand she has to trust in a long baseline exchange, every tiebreak she has to claw through when her legs are heavy and the crowd is leaning forward, it all becomes part of her clay court vocabulary. It all goes into the foundation she is building for Paris. And speaking of Paris, let's take a moment to appreciate something that deserves to be celebrated. Alex has already secured her place in the Roland Garros main draw, and she did it on merit. Not a wild card. Not a lucky loser pathway. She earned it through her world ranking, which at 20 years old and inside the top 40 is a genuinely remarkable achievement. She is going to the French Open because she belongs at the French Open. And that distinction matters enormously. It tells you that the tennis world isn't just charmed by her story or impressed by her fan base. They are recognizing her as a legitimate competitive force on the women's tour. Getting into Roland Garros is one thing. Knowing how to perform there, in that atmosphere, on those courts, in those late rounds where the pressure becomes almost physical, that's an entirely different mountain to climb. And that's exactly what Strasbourg is for. The timing of this tournament is almost too perfect. It runs from May 17th to May 23rd. Roland Garros begins May 24th. 1 week separates these two events. The conditions are as close to the French Open as you can get without actually being there. The French clay, the French weather, the particular way the ball sits up on a slow red surface after a cool morning, all of it is essentially a full simulation of what's waiting in Paris. Every match Alex plays this week is a dress rehearsal. Every adjustment she makes, every pattern she discovers, every moment of discomfort she works through, she's doing it in the safest possible context while still facing real competitive pressure. That's the genius of this week for her development. This isn't just about warming up. This is about arriving in Paris already in rhythm, already sharp, already trusting her game on clay in a way that only competitive matches can build. And when you watch her talk about where her game is right now, you hear something that sounds a lot like genuine confidence. Not the performative kind that athletes sometimes project to manage expectations. Real confidence, built on real work, built on the honest acknowledgement that she is a better player today than she was a year ago. She's had struggles on clay. She'll tell you that herself. But she's also had great matches on clay, and she's carrying both of those truths into this week. She's not pretending the challenges aren't there. She's just not afraid of them anymore. That evolution in mindset is often the last thing to arrive for young players, and when it does arrive, it tends to unlock something in the actual tennis. The serve gets a little looser. The forehand has a little more intention. The movement becomes a little more decisive because the mind isn't second-guessing every pattern. Alex feels like she's at that point right now, or very close to it, and Strasbourg is the place where we might actually get to see it come fully into focus. There's also a bigger story here that I think is worth sitting with for a moment. What Alex is doing for Filipino tennis, for Filipino sport, for the way the world perceives Filipino athletes on a global stage, it's genuinely historic. This isn't a player who got a wild card into a small event and caught a couple of favorable draws. This is a top 40 professional athlete competing at the highest level of her sport, week after week, against the best players in the world, and doing it while carrying a nation's hope and history on her back. Every match she plays introduces the Strasbourg Open to 100,000 new people. Every win she earns makes a young girl in Manila pick up a tennis racket for the first time. Every moment she competes with that quiet intensity and that elegant game, she is rewriting what is possible for athletes from her country on the world stage. That is not a small thing. That is a genuinely enormous thing, and it deserves to be recognized as such. Denis Naegelen has been running this tournament for 15 years. He has welcomed some of the biggest names in women's tennis through those gates. But he has said himself that this welcome has been different. That the feeling around his tournament this week is something he hasn't experienced before. And the reason is walking around Strasbourg right now in practice gear, hitting forehands on French clay, getting ready for a draw full of world-class opponents, and doing it all while the Philippines watches. Alex is 20 years old. She's 5 professional clay court events into what is going to be a very long and very decorated career. She is learning the surface in real time, match by match, tournament by tournament. She is earning her place at every table she sits at. And she is doing it with a grace and a composure that would be impressive in a 30-year-old veteran, let alone someone who is still technically at the very beginning of her journey. Strasbourg is buzzing. The draw is loaded. Paris is 1 week away. And Alex, she's just getting warmed up. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think this is the week where everything clicks on clay? Do you think Strasbourg ends with her lifting a trophy before heading to Paris? Or is this purely about building rhythm and match sharpness for the French Open? And when Roland Garros begins on May 24th, how far do you genuinely see her going? Round of 16? Quarterfinals? Further? Because I know you have thoughts, and I genuinely want to read every single one of them in the comments. And for all the Filipino fans watching right now, wherever you are in the world, whatever hour it is where you are, just know that this community sees you, and we are going to cover every single step of this journey together. Like the video if you're riding with Alex this week. Subscribe if you're new here. And let's watch history happen.